Webster World Report, a program linking Webster University's global system while the world is in crisis. Here's our host, Rick Rockwell.
This is the July 2020 edition of the Webster World Report, and this time a different approach. We'll be hearing primarily from the students at Webster University during this edition of our program. Students talking about race and racism in America, politics, and coping with the coronavirus pandemic. But first, let's hear from the student on our staff, newscaster Tierra Gray.
Webster University began a new virtual speaker series this week with the debut of Webster Speaks, a series focusing on issues of race, equity, and inclusion. Donald Suggs, the publisher of the St. Louis American, was the first featured guest.
The organizing principle behind so many of the institutions and practices and policies that we find reprehensible in our society lie in something that has been part of European thought, behavior, action since the 13th century. So it's not new, the whole notion of white supremacy.
The Webster Speaks series is hosted by Vincent Fedorko, the Chief Diversity Officer at Webster. The next program will be July 22nd, featuring Ella Jones, the first Black mayor of Ferguson, Missouri. Registration information for the series can be found on the university's website, webster.edu. An employee of Webster University tested positive for COVID-19, causing the temporary shutdown of part of the East Academic Building in late June. Workers provided deep cleaning of the building before it was reopened. The case came during the first week that supervisors and managers were returning to the main campus in Webster Groves. The university continues preparing for in-person operations, with a phased return to campus by staff members. All staff required to return to campus are expected to be back by the end of July. Graduate classes begin August 17th, with undergraduate classes beginning August 22nd. All international campuses have begun a phased return to in-person operations, with the exception of Uzbekistan and China, where operations remain modified and remote. The U.S. Embassy in Uzbekistan has awarded a grant to Webster University Tashkent to host a new course. The course is called English for Professionals in Mass Media. The course is designed to give members of the media in Uzbekistan a better understanding of English, so they can access media sources and information more easily online. Hilola Samatova, adjunct professor and writer of the grant, said those members of the media who take the course will likely improve the quality of journalism in Uzbekistan. Josh Fleming, a former Webster Gorlock, will pitch for the Tampa Bay Rays in the Major League Baseball's abbreviated season later this summer. Fleming is the first alum from Webster to go to the major leagues. He was an All-American at Webster in 2017. For the Webster World Report, I'm Tierra Gray.
We'll be hearing more from Tierra in just a moment. This week, she steps beyond her role as newscaster and into the job of leading interviews. Along with being a graduate student, Tierra is the president of the Association of African American Collegians at Webster University. Here's her interview with one of the members of that group, Larry Hearn, who's a psychology major with an emphasis on mental health. He's also a member of the African Student Association. They conducted their interview by phone in St. Louis, Missouri.
As a psych student at Webster, one of the primary things that I've learned about mental health is that it's important. Mental health is important. You know, that's your mood. You know, that's how you look at things. That's how you look at yourself. I would say second from that, I've learned that mental health is something that must be maintained. It's something that must be managed. I remember being in my learning strategies course with Dr. Erica Ellert, and we learned about self-talk. What you say to yourself impacts your mental health. what you allow yourself to be exposed to impacts your mental health. So that's a great segue over into the next thing that I would say, which is awareness of your mental health. Aware that it's something that's important. You know what I'm saying? And like I said before that, it's something that must be maintained. So yeah, that's something that I've learned while being at Webster. Is that your mental health matters a lot. It's not something that should, not be paid attention to. How can we protect our emotional and mental health and well-being during the era of police brutality, violence, and the pandemic? And that is a loaded question. But for me as a psychologist and as a student of color living in this era, I would say the best thing for us to do is to try and cling to what is good, because I just have this philosophy that there is as much good in the world as there is bad. And for me, I guess it gets a little bit easier because I'm a person of faith, and I have this belief that God is in control of what's out of control. But I also am not ignorant to the fact that not everyone believes in the God that I believe in, and not everyone believes in a God. So that's why I rest in saying that, whatever good that you have, family, whatever makes you smile, whatever brings you laughter, brings you joy, makes you feel safe, makes you feel like a kid again, I say wrap your arms around that. And that's what you hold on to living in an era such as this. Yeah.
Wow, I'd have to agree. I think that's really important to focus on everything good that's going around in times like this, to focus on the good things.
Yeah. And one more thing about that, also, like, understanding that this is a daily decision that must be made. I guess it's for some, you can easily say this is going to be a great week, this is going to be a great month, this is going to be a great year. But when you have a pandemic going on, when you have police brutality going on, that it's necessary that you make a daily decision. We make a daily decision as individuals to choose what to give our focus to make sure we're limiting what we're consuming, like such as the news and on social media, because that can be draining and exhausting. So that's also something that I'd like to add, is that it's a daily decision that must be made.
So what does racial equality look like and mean to you as an African American male? Can you describe a world that has racial equality?
As an African American male, describing a world where there's racial equality, I would say for me, that would be me recognizing that no matter what, I'm always being seen as human. We could think of adjectives such as like, oh, cool, authentic, smart, intelligent, athletic. If a person never thinks that I'm any of those things, I just want to know that I'm seen as human. And I think that's my idea of a world as a black man of racial equality, of racial equity, is recognizing that no matter where I'm at, I'm always seen as human, even if I'm not seen as like the smartest or like someone with the highest IQ score or something like that. But I'll never have to question whether or not I'm being seen as a human being.
So as you know, diversity and inclusion are part of Webster's core values. And part of the mission of Webster, along with quality academic programs, is to prepare students for global citizenship and individual excellence. How has Webster impacted your perception and outlook on diversity? And why is this an important component of a higher education degree?
Well, one of the reasons I came to Webster University is for diversity. I would say Webster is progressing as it pertains to diversity, because they're understanding that it's what the school is known for. We're a global university. We have campuses around the world. Therefore, if that is so, if we have campuses around the world, that means we have people from around the world, students from around the world, maybe even faculty and staff members. And you just want to have that inclusive environment. So I would say that Webster, with my experience of being here, has done a really good job of providing an inclusive environment for students who come from all different racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, letting them know that when you're here, you're here as an individual, and you can bring your culture with you, you can bring your religion with you, you can bring your gender identity with you. And so I think Webster is doing a great progressive job in making sure that the mission is being upheld, of making sure that everyone could be themselves, exist in the same environment.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You have such great insight on that. Thank you for joining us, Larry.
My pleasure. Go up strong.
That interview with student Larry Hearn was conducted by Tierra Gray in St. Louis. We'll be hearing more from Webster students about race, racism, and the coronavirus pandemic in a moment. Stay with us.
If you like this program, please nominate the Webster World Report for the People's Choice Podcast Awards. After July 1st, go to www.podcastawards.com to nominate the program. That's www.podcastawards.com.
Become the most effective manager, leader, and entrepreneur you can be with a Walker MBA from Webster University. Rebuilt from the ground up, this MBA leverages the concept of value creation. Designed for the part-time working student, pick the online or web-enhanced hybrid option. A new MBA, the way you need it. Webster's Walker MBA. Master your future. For more information or to apply, webster.edu/MBA.
Webster Vienna Private University offers rolling admissions to a variety of bachelor's and master's or MBA programs. Students receive one-on-one mentoring and direct guidance from faculty, especially important in the current distance learning environment. We look forward to welcoming students back on campus this fall. To learn more, visit www.webster.ac.at.
Welcome back to the Webster World Report. The definition of diversity includes the concept of diversity of thought. In the past, the student newspaper and media outlet at Webster, The Journal, has reported that some conservative students at Webster have not always felt welcome. So we sought out Vincent Fedorko. He's the founder and president of the Webster University Conservatives. Fedorko is an undergraduate majoring in speech communications. He joined us via Cisco WebEx from St. Louis.
At least what I've experienced, like, I definitely understand that colleges are more of like a liberal mindset, but I think it's harder for like smaller campuses to have like both or like differing opinions, because like we had a Republican club in like 2013, but then we just didn't have enough people, so it disappeared. And so it was just kind of like, on a roll of just like, okay, like whatever it was, just throwing out a random, but if like, okay, like 97% of the people all like think and act the same as I do, then it's just kind of there, and it's just like, a common place of just discussion. And so what I wanted with this club was this diversity of thought, that you can have different people who are like, whoa, that is not even like my belief whatsoever. Like I think one thing and they're like, no, I definitely think another way. And that's the whole point. And like, it's important to have diversity of thought, because just on everything, whether it's politics, religious beliefs, familial beliefs, or whatever, like how you were raised, different like things in that area too, learning different skills. Like the whole point of it is that like you have those discussions and you're like, okay, this person disagrees with me, but like, why do you believe that? Like, like, oh, why do you support abortion? Why do you don't support abortion? Like yada, yada, yada. And like, the point is to like challenge and like make you critically think. You're like, okay, so like, why do I believe what I believe? Instead of just being like, I believe this and I don't believe this. Like, okay, but how does that like help you as an individual? Like, why are you so passionate about this issue and maybe not so passionate about this one, and that kind of thing? Some people are like, I don't want to associate with you. that's their choice. They're a free thinking adult. They can do whatever they want. But I've actually been surprised. Like, a lot of people have been really like chill about it. I'm like, okay, like maybe we don't talk about this, or we do a little bit, but like I don't agree with you, but I still love you as a person because you're, X, Y, and Z. And so I just kind of roll with that. I have plenty of friends who are liberals. I'm like, yeah, 100%. I'll disagree with you any day of the week, but like you're still my friend. Like, you're the best. I love you. Blah blah blah. And so that's what like I really want it to be. Is it's not supposed to be this like whole like hot topic thing of like, oh, we're evil and we're racist and we hate you. Like, no, we're just here to like bring a discussion and have like a differing opinion and help us both grow as individuals in what we believe in.
What are your thoughts about what's been going on in the country since you left campus?
The COVID stuff is still going on, but a lot more stuff's opened up now, obviously with guidelines and stuff like that. So it just went from like one thing of like, okay, like we can't go outside and all this stuff. And then everything would happen with George Floyd. It was right after that, and it almost like switched. And I won't say like hasn't been talked about, but that's definitely been like the primary thing that's been on everyone's mind. And so I think it's just like crazy because I've seen like lots of memes and people joke about it, but it's like there's just so much going on in 2020. It's almost like hard to pay attention because like as soon as one thing starts to die down, then like something else comes in. I think really it's just trying to be able to like process it and being able to listen to both sides of the aisle and hear each other's, like what everyone thinks on things, because I think that's the whole point of college is you're supposed to be able to like hear different opinions and be like, oh my gosh, like I didn't think of that, or like why do you believe what you believe and stuff like that. And I think while it is hyperpolarized, just aside from this, but just in general as politics, I still think it's good, especially for people in college and even younger, that to just like start having discussions about it, whether it's with friends or teachers or anything like that, because that's how you learn and you understand, instead of being like, oh, you're just dumb because you don't believe the same things as I do. You have to have that conversation and discussion or debates or in like whatever format to like understand where other people are coming from. Be like, okay, I may not agree with you, but I can see where you're coming from.
So that brings us, I think, back to the Floyd protests. What is your take on those protests and what's going on in the country right now as we talk about civil rights, social justice? I
think it's good that we should be talking about this. Personally, I don't think the like way of going about it is necessarily the best, in my opinion. It's not really more of a discussion. It's more of just people just like targeting, in my opinion, and like just destroying stuff. And it's sad to see like people whose businesses that have just been like completely destroyed because of it. And I'm like, but why are you destroying something that's like not yours? Or even like black-owned businesses are getting destroyed. And I'm like, but I thought it was supposed to be like that Black Lives Matter and it's important, and they do, but I'm like, but then why are you destroying like people's businesses that are like within your own community? And like, that's really sad because, someone who's like worked so hard, some people are just like, oh, we should just not have cops or whatever, which I don't think is right. There are, with everything in life, there's going to be bad people of all kinds. There are bad cops, and yes, those people are bad, and like the ones that killed George Floyd, there is absolutely no excuse for that.
But you too agree that the Black Lives Matter slogan matters. You participated in Blackout Tuesday. Seems that you support that as a slogan.
To an extent, yes. It is important. Like, Black lives do matter, but I might get some flack for this, but I think all people do. Like, yes, it's an issue right now because of police brutality, but it's in the same thing of like any other like situation. Like, it's not just like the black people are the only ones targeted by bad cops or just people in general.
You do think that some of these cases, the Floyd case, the Aubrey case in Louisville, many of the other cases that are going forward right now, that there's some justification in looking into those, don't you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I like in those cases, there is no like exception, or there is no like defending those people. Like the ones that just like went out and like actively killed them, like that is not okay 100%.
And so I think this is the discussion over the concept of Black Lives Matter, that many African Americans feel that their lives have been devalued for a long time. maybe since slavery. And so it's important to say that because they don't feel that they've been treated equally in the justice system, in the employment system.
In that regard, like, yes, it's not like devalued and stuff like that, but it's not only in like those things. I mean, we see that in like police brutality, sure, but like if we like look at the things, there's even higher numbers, and it's awful that we see it. But like a lot of the places where now this is slightly changing the topic a bit, but like where Planned Parenthoods are set up is in the minority communities, and unfortunately, like a lot of the people that happen there are killed or like that have abortions. And one of the things is like even the person who founded Planned Parenthood was like an actual racist and like founded it to as she was trying to say was like exterminate African Americans, and that's like a huge issue that I think is like not okay, because as I was saying earlier, it's important that everyone's life is valued, and like 100% it's awful that the cases that are being brought right now that are like being killed and stuff like that, but it's not like that's like yes, it is an issue, but it's not like the only one that's like pinpointed. Like there's a huge thing of African Americans and stuff like that being killed before they even have a chance to like have a life and stuff like that, and that's also like just as important and sad and heartbreaking to hear those stories as it is to hear the ones that happen where they're innocently killed as well.
Well, thank you so much. Our guest today on the Webster World Report, Vincent Fedorko, the founder and president of the Webster University Conservatives. Join us via Cisco WebEx from St. Louis.
Thank you, Rick.
We conclude our student interviews this week with another conversation conducted by Tierra Gray. This one was student Mimiw Seagrave. She's based in Thailand, but is currently taking her classes remotely through Webster University Leiden in the Netherlands. She's an international human rights major who has worked with Amnesty International. They spoke between St. Louis and Chiang Mai, Thailand via Cisco WebEx.
I work on all social justice issues, but do gravitate towards work that supports women and children. As for Amnesty International, I am a student activist coordinator, which means no matter the campaign or social justice issue, my focus is on encouraging, supporting, and making youth activism possible in Missouri and across the United States.
What are some current campaigns you're getting involved with?
So at any given moment, Amnesty International is involved in a wide variety of social justice campaigns. Two current campaigns I've seen the most are the Black Lives Matter movement, racial justice and equity, and gun violence.
And tell me more about an internship or some field work or student organization that you've been involved with at Webster, and how has this been helpful for your career?
For my field work, I worked with a local organization called Immigrant and Refugee Women's Program, IRWP. Their mission is to increase independence and reduce the isolation of immigrant and refugee women by teaching them basic English and practical living skills in the security of their own home. I contributed to their mission as an intern, creating specialized lesson plans and teaching English to my two students, who were mothers from Burma. My experience from IRWP was beneficial in the way that it humanized. In the classroom, often immigrant and refugees are portrayed as numbers, as statistics. As I became a normal part of their lives and their lives intertwined with mine, I became close to them. I was reminded of their humanity. That's something that connects us all. I also left the internship with a better understanding of how supporting immigrant and refugee women is extremely important for their communities. Simple things that we take for granted, like knowing enough English to feel comfortable enough to be able to go grocery shopping to feed our families, communicate with teachers, doctors, helping children and families within their own English lessons, knowing how to drive, the list goes on. These women are the cornerstone of their communities.
In the United States right now, there is a lot of protesting going on due to the recent shootings. Many of the protests have been peaceful and some have turned violent. Throughout your work with Amnesty International, I'm sure you have experience protest rallies and lobby visits. What are some ways you can exercise your human right of freedom of public assembly safely and within reason? Can you give us an example of protests and rallies you've experienced?
As an activist, you have to understand from the beginning that peaceful protests will not always remain peaceful. If we take the example of the protests that make up the Black Lives Matter movement, we know that many protests have been turned violent because of the unnecessary violent response by police and law enforcement. That is not something we can control. Additionally, I hear a lot of people in favor of peaceful protests condemning the violence by quoting Martin Luther King Jr. But you have to understand, his famous peaceful protest was also met by violent force and turned violent. His methods mirror Colin Kaepernick's peaceful protest. But when peaceful methods are ignored time and time again, after 300 years of oppression, something must change. As a human rights student, after studying major protests and movements in history and attending some of them on my own, I know violence can be utilized as a catalyst, a major force that causes change when peaceful protests fail. Ultimately, the only way to safely and peacefully exercise your human right of freedom assembly is to dismantle the racist systems that work against it.
So Mimiw, as a minority, an Asian and ethnic minority within Thailand, how can you relate to racial inequality and discrimination? How do you feel about that as you have studied around the world in United States, in Geneva and Leiden? How can you relate to racial inequality and discrimination?
Put simply, my oppression as an Asian Lisu woman is very different from Black people in America. But the international relations system and the systems that govern the world were created by the people in power. They were created to favor the white people in power. And if we go back to imperialism and colonialism across the minorities, we find that globally we are still being oppressed by the same racist systems that were put into place so long ago. So as minorities, we should stand together and work to dismantle those systems globally that oppress us all. And that is the way that I relate to the oppression that Black people face in America.
Interesting perspective.
It was awesome talking to you.
If you're interested in getting involved with Amnesty International at Webster University, you can go to involved.webster.edu and visit their Facebook page, Webster University Amnesty International.
That interview with Mimiw Seagrave was conducted by Tierra Gray between St. Louis and Chiang Mai, Thailand via Cisco WebEx. Thanks for listening. The Webster World Report will return with a fresh program on Friday, August 7th. We'd like to add your voices to our program. If you're a student, a staff member, or a member of the faculty, reach out to us. Send us a short audio clip from your cell phone or contact us via email to volunteer to be interviewed on the program. You can find us at covid19@webster.edu. You can also send questions or comments to that email address about our world in crises. That address again is covid19@webster.edu. Also, check out the university's COVID-19 resources pages at webster.edu/COVID-19. The Webster World Report is now available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and of course SoundCloud. You can also hear the program on your Alexa speaker via TuneIn. Also, our report is featured on KWRH-FM Radio 63119. That's 92.9 FM in Webster Groves, Missouri. Thanks for joining us this week. The Webster World Report is produced by students, staff, and faculty at Webster University. For announcer Patrick Giblin, news reporter Tierra Gray, and associate producer Jennifer Gammage, I'm Rick Rockwell. Stay healthy and safe.
The Webster World Report is produced by the Global Marketing and Communications Division of Webster University and through the facilities and copyright support of Webster School of Communications. This program is copyright 2020.